Hey there, photographers. Today I'm sharing 5 simple tips that will take your photography from ordinary to extraordinary in no time. Whether you're using a cell phone or a DSLR, these tips are universal and will help you elevate your photography game to capture stunning shots every time. So let's dive right in. Tip number 1. Master your composition. First, let's define composition. Composition is simply the arrangement of visual elements within the frame to create an aesthetically pleasing image. The goal of composition is to guide the viewer's eye through the image. So, as a photographer, first you must be mindful of every element you put into the frame. They should serve a purpose, otherwise, it's just a distraction to the subject and should be removed. Secondly, you should arrange all those elements in a way that is pleasing to the viewer's eyes, that helps the viewer read the image and understand it. This is where composition and its rules come in. The easiest and most famous rule to follow is the rule of thirds. To follow that, imagine your frame divided into 9 equal parts by 2 horizontal and 2 vertical lines. Placing your subject along these lines or at their intersections make your image look more professional and interesting. There are some psychological reasons for this phenomenon, which we are not getting into. So next time when taking a photo, try to place the subject a little bit to the right or to the left instead of putting it in the center, and see the difference for yourself. Let me show you an example. By moving the subject from the center slightly to the side in this photo, we create a feeling of asymmetry in the frame, which is more thought-provoking and interesting to see. Now, here's a tip you can use on your camera to be mindful of this rule next time you take a photo. Almost every camera has the option to activate the grid to help with composition. For instance, in an iPhone, go to Settings, then choose the camera, and there you can toggle the grid on. Next time, when you open the camera app, you will see the grids there, and you will be mindful to use the rule of thirds if you want to. Simply try to move your frame and place your subject on either of these lines or their intersections, and see for yourself which one looks better. Then take your shot. There are so many different rules about composition, and the rule of thirds is the most basic one. But you gotta know that none of these rules are sacred. They are all meant to be broken at times, and professional photographers do that all the time. But again, you need to be aware of those rules at first, so that when you want to break one, you'll be intentional about it, and you will know what you are doing. Tip number 2, focus on lighting. Appropriate lighting can make or break a photo, so it's crucial for you as a photographer to take note of your light source and its qualities whenever you are taking a picture. Is it the sun in the sky, or you just using artificial light to light up the scene? Is the light intense or gentle? What direction is it coming from? Is it soft or harsh? Warm or cool? These are all the qualities of light that you need to be familiar with when you are taking a picture. So let's go through them one by one and see how they affect our photographs. First is the intensity of light, which is simply the strength or brightness of the light in the frame. If the camera is in auto mode, it will automatically compensate for the intensity of the light to take a well-exposed photo. But if you are using manual mode, you need to dial ISO, aperture, and shutter speed to control how much light is getting into the camera. In photography terms, it's called exposure. To learn more about it, check out my video on exposure and understand how ISO, aperture, and shutter speed can affect your photos. Then we have the direction of light, which is another attribute that you need to be mindful of. For instance, if the light is coming from behind the subject, it will make a silhouette effect, causing the subject to render dark. Whereas when the light hits the subject from the front, it brightens the subject and tends to flatten the textures and make it more two-dimensional. Light from the sides, however, reveal the form, gives the subject a feeling of being three-dimensional and accentuates textures. It is a great practice to move around your subject and see how light in different angles affects the image you capture. Next, we have the light softness or harshness. Typically, when light is directly coming from a light source and there is nothing in between, it will be harsh and create sharp shadow edges, like when the sky is clear. It might not be an ideal light to take portrait as it causes sharp shadows on the face. But on a cloudy or foggy day, that layer of cloud and fog will act like a diffuser and will soften the light and diffuse the shadow edges. In a studio photography, they use softboxes to create the same effect and make the light more subtle and appealing. Finally, there is color temperature, which is measured in Kelvin, and it simply shows us how warm or cool a light is. For instance, the light around sunrise and sunset tends to be warm and orangey in tone, while the light in shadows or during an overcast day tends to be cooler with a bluish undertone. In your camera, there is a setting called white balance, which allows you to compensate for this. It allows you to take a totally neutral photo, no matter how warm or cool the actual light is. But again, you don't have to do that necessarily. You can use these warm and cool undertones to set different moods in your photographs. So these are the main characteristics of light that you need to study more and experiment with while you are developing your photography skill sets. Just keep in mind that none of these qualities is good or bad inherently. They just serve different purposes. Tip number 3. Keep it steady. Shaky hands can ruin a perfectly composed photo. So use a tripod if you have one, or stabilize yourself by leaning on a solid surface. If nothing else works, hold your camera steady with both hands and keep your elbows tucked in. This will minimize the shakiness of your hands. Check your camera to see if it supports image stabilization. If so, turn that on by shooting handheld to add an extra bit of sharpness to your photographs. Pressing the shutter button itself can cause shakiness and blur in the photographs, even when you use a tripod. So to solve that, you can use the timer option. Whether you are shooting with your cell phone camera or using a DSLR, there is always an option to capture the photo 2 to 3 seconds after pressing the shutter button. This simple hack will eliminate the movement when you push the button, leading to a sharper image. Some cell phone cameras support hand gestures, so instead of pressing any button, you simply raise your hand in front of the camera and 3 seconds later, the image will be captured. You can also use remote buttons for your DSLR camera, so you don't have to press the shutter button on the camera body. So again, depending on your situation and the type of camera you are using, you have a variety of options to capture a sharper, more stable image. Tip number 4. Get creative with angles. Don't just shoot at eye level and get creative with your angles. An image that is taken from eye level can be mundane and easy to grasp. Instead, try shooting from a low angle to make your subject look larger than life, or from above for a unique perspective. This way, the image can be more engaging and thought-provoking as the viewer faces a different point of view and try harder to make sense of the image. So next time when taking a picture, try to lower the camera or go above the subject if that's possible. Move around your subject and see how it looks from different points of view. You will soon realize that typically the most interesting photo is usually not the one that is taken from eye level. So just experiment to find what works best for your shot. And finally, the most important tip is to simply go out and practice. No matter how many books you read and how well you know the techniques, There is nothing like going out there and actually taking some pictures. Try to think about light qualities and compositional ideas while you are shooting and see how they affect your shots. You will come back with hundreds of photos and maybe a handful of them are interesting, and that's okay. Do not get discouraged by that, because that's part of the process. Review your shots and think about how you can make it better next time. Another form of practice you can implement in your everyday life is to see things like a photographer. And the amazing thing about it is that you don't need a camera to do that. Start by training your eyes to see the world like a photographer. Look around and notice the little things you might usually overlook, like the way sunlight creates shadows on a wall or how colors pop after a rainstorm. Pay attention to patterns, textures, and interesting shapes in your surroundings, and imagine how you'd frame them in a photo. By practicing this way of seeing, you'll sharpen your skills and be ready to capture amazing shots when you do have your camera. And there you have it, 5 simple tips to instantly improve your photography. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tips and tutorials. Again, thanks for watching and see you in the next one.